I've been promising some of these deeper dives for a while, these stories for another time that I think of while I'm putting all my thoughts together. Odds are this one's going to be tough for me to get through, and it's going to be long. You know that stereotypical little kid that was always hiding behind his mother's dress? That was me. I was always quiet, not in the brooding loner kind of way, that would come later. But it's fair to say I didn't integrate well as a kid. In the beginning, I just didn't want any attention on me. If I was close to you, I was fine. But if we interacted only occasionally, even my relatives, I was aloof. I have vague memories of visiting different relatives and always feeling really awkward because I never quite knew what to say to them. I loved them all, but we had no common ground other than the fact that we were related to each other. If I had started to come out of my shell, my parents' divorce sucked me right back in. It was school after school, new bully after new bully, more people I didn't know. How bad was it? This is where it starts to get a little hard. My folks split up when I was in third grade, and it was right in the middle of the school year when I ended up changing schools. I went from the cloistered world of private religious based education to suburban public school. It was a pretty easy transition, except I wasn't ready for any of it. I remember sitting in the office of my new school and just feeling totally disconnected from everything. One of those out of body moments. Nothing made any sense to me. Everything hurt. I was 8 years old and my life wasn't supposed to be going like this. My mom got me registered and I was sent to integrate with the rest of my class. They were in the cafeteria getting ready for lunch. I lined up, and when my turn came, I noticed the tacos had tomatoes on them. Up until a couple of years ago, I really hated tomatoes. So, just keep that in mind. So I meekly asked the cafeteria lady if I could get tacos with no tomatoes. I remember she kind of looked sternly at me and just seemed to kind of scowl at me, scrape them off, kid. Over the years, I've formed kind of a Beulah Ballbricker type memory of this lady. If you never saw Porky's, Miss Ballbricker was the girls' PE teacher. She was just mean looking, completely unpleasant to everyone. I'm sure the lunch lady was nice enough, but in that moment, it, didn't really register that way with me. Whatever the case, I cried like a banshee all the way to my seat at the cafeteria table. And I remember sitting there by myself, just like I didn't know what to do. I wasn't ready for any of this, but having the benefit of the years that I have now, I was facing adversity for the first time and I didn't like it. But that was the first impression I made on all my public school classmates. Like I said, I realized how badly I overreacted, but the trauma has never really left me fully. And like, everything else in my life, it had some kind of effect on me. That's my first memory of third grade. Eventually, I did integrate with the rest of my class. I made up a couple of friends, but it was the start of my rebellious phase too. So I'd refused to get my hair cut. My school experience up to that point had been really formal. Kids were expected to dress a certain way, wear their hair a certain way, etc. Public school didn't have any of those boundaries. I could wear what I wanted, I could let my hair go, and that's what I did. I was acting out, and we moved again. You ever done those icebreaker things where someone asks you what your superpower is or what you would want your superpower to be? Someone usually answers invisibility, and they've usually got a reasonable explanation as to why. As someone that lived the first 20 some years of their life as an invisible person, I'll let you know it's not as great as it sounds. Look, obviously I wasn't actually invisible, but I definitely wasn't memorable to most people, and I'm really just coming to grips with the impacts of that. I ended up going to 8 different schools between third grade and graduation. That's professional new kid territory, kids. Being the new kid in class nearly every year caused me to develop this kind of invisibility armor. I was already painfully shy. If you only got to know me as an adult, you only knew part of it. The last thing I ever wanted as a kid was any sort of attention, positive or negative. And whether intentional or not, I kind of got what I wanted. It was all by design for me at the time. Look, between 8th and 10th grades, I sat in front of the same person in homeroom for 3 years. And when we started talking about being classmates one time, she swore we'd never met. She was very insistent on this point. And finally, someone that kind of did remember me came by and convinced her that I was in fact who I said I was. That's only one example, but there's a pattern. I'm not bitter about any of this, by the way. It was my defense mechanism in school. Any attention was bad attention. Invisibility was the goal for me in school. As I continue to peel away all this mental decay in my head, I'm finding out not only did I sell myself short, but I really misjudged a lot of other people in the process. Look, you're going to hear some catches in my voices as I do these things. The fact that I'm at a place where I can process stuff now comes with a lot of emotional adjustment on my part. At some point with all this moving, I guess my mom realized that moving in the middle of a school year was a really bad idea. When we moved the next time, we moved over summer break. My mom was friends with one of my friends' moms, and they'd figured this plan out where we'd end up staying in the same school together. By the way, still friends with the guy. I love him to death. He was a grade ahead of me, but we were in the same school, and there is literally nothing remarkable about that time period other than my friendship and normal life things. I don't have any painful school memories from any of that. So things must have been pretty normal for a while. After that first year, that's when things got really bad for me. It's upsetting to me to look back at my school photo for that year because all I see is a miserable kid. I see the pain in my eyes. It sounds dippy, but it's real. I can't look at that picture at all. I put on a lot of weight. I went back into not having a whole lot of friends. My one friend was a grade ahead of me. He'd moved to middle school, so he was in a different school, and I just started hurting again. I withdrew from a lot of things, and this is sort of where that brooding loner phase started to develop. In the middle of all this turmoil at school, my mom was kind of rekindling her social life. I'm not going to talk bad about my mom. We talked a lot since then. We're cool. It was a lot to throw at a 12-year-old kid. Um, Throw in not having a lot of friends, and yeah, you kind of get a teenage loner. I'd make a friend or two every time I switched schools, and they always took time. Very, very few of them stuck. And the ones that did stick, though, I'm still friends with all of them to this day. Every new school came with other undesirable outcomes when you're a fat, quiet kid. You're an easy target for ridicule pretty much all the time. And I never stood up for myself. I was too afraid to. It was attention. I didn't want that. And I didn't have any support. I was going to be the new kid. So, I had to figure this out. I had to figure out how to get myself out of every situation like that. The few times I did stick up for myself, I ended up in the same trouble as the person that was picking on me. So I got to the point where I didn't understand why any of it was worth it. If playing hockey has taught me anything, it's that no one sees the initial provocation, but everyone sees the retaliation. So I spent time in detention building this reputation with my family that I'm this troubled kid. Really, I just wanted to be left alone. If I go back and I look at my school pictures, I can see the sadness in my eyes. I know it sounds melodramatic, but it's real. I'm not saying these things now to garner any kind of attention. I've dealt with all this. Well, mostly. The culmination of all this angsty teenage loner bit happened for me in ninth grade, as I recall. It's fair to say that attitudes towards dealing with kids were different when I went to school. I'm sure all the intentions were good, but the execution pretty much always missed the mark. So when I was told I would be part of a shyness focus group, I was actually hopeful at first. Maybe somebody could help me with all this. Like I said, intentions were good, but let's talk this one out. You stick 8 shy kids, none of whom know each other, in a room every Tuesday for 8 weeks and you start asking them to talk about themselves. The bar should be pretty low there. But instead, the moderator or counselor or whatever struggled to get any of us to say anything. We just sat there staring at each other, everybody trying to be invisible, and nobody talking. Sometime during 10th grade, we moved again. This time, though, my mom had a plan. I wouldn't be changing schools. It had become a major issue for me. My mom figured she'd take me to this bus stop that my old school would pick up from, and then I could walk home in the afternoons. It was about a mile walk, but hey, if it meant no new school, man, I was totally on board. And our plan worked for a little while, but eventually my counselor at school told me I didn't have any choice. I had to change schools again. Look, for the first time in my life, I'm taking risks and I'm not afraid of hiding things about myself anymore. And I can't tell you how wonderful it's been hearing from people who've listened even just once and just for a minute. Everyone has been so amazingly supportive. Thank you all for listening. Over the past year or so, I've told people I think I'm losing my mind. That feeling started about this time last year. I've slowed down on these because I feel it creeping back. I think I know why, and I'm doing things to fix it. Any slowdown is going to be temporary while I get things back on track. Take care.